Captain Hyanwu had been staring at the swirling patterns on his command screen for the past 20 minutes, watching deep space sensors sweep across empty sectors of the galaxy. The bridge of the UES Thunderstrike hummed with its usual quiet efficiency, officers monitoring their stations while the massive destroyer cut through the darkness between stars. "Sir, we're picking up something unusual," called out Lieutenant Yunji from her communications post, her fingers dancing across. "Holographic controls. It's definitely artificial, but the signal pattern is unlike anything in our databases." Hyanwu pushed himself up from his captain's chair, his weathered hands gripping the armrests. At 45, he had spent more years in space than most people spent in their careers, and his instincts had kept him alive through 3 major conflicts. Right now, those instincts were telling him something big was about to happen. "Put it on the main display," he ordered. Walking closer to the massive screen that dominated the bridge's forward section, the static cleared, placed by a series of complex waveforms and data streams. But underneath the technical readouts, something else came through, a sound that needed no translation. It was the universal language of desperation, fear, and plea for help. "It's been repeating for 3 hours," Yunji reported, her dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of her instruments. "The signal is coming from the Kepler 442 system, approximately 47 light-years from our current position." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Every officer knew that distance meant nothing in terms of hyperspace travel, but it represented the edge of known human territory. Beyond that lay the vast, unexplored regions, where anything could be lurking. "Can you clean up the audio?" Yunhua asked. Yunji's fingers worked their magic across her console. Slowly, the static faded, and alien voices became clear. The language was completely foreign, but the emotion behind it was unmistakably human in its raw terror. "Translation algorithms are working on it now, sir," reported Petty Officer Dong Hyan from the linguistics station. "Based on mathematical patterns and repeated phrases, I think I can give you a rough interpretation." Minutes passed like hours as the computer systems worked to decode the alien language. Finally, text began scrolling across the screens, and what it revealed made everyone on the bridge feel cold, despite the warm, recycled air. Sir Dong Hyan's voice was barely above a whisper. "They're calling themselves the Kalari Republic. According to this message, they're under attack by something called the Draketh Empire. The transmission is coming from their homeworld, and they're asking for immediate military assistance from anyone who can hear them." Hyun-woo felt his jaw muscles tighten. Over the past 6 months, intelligence reports had been filtering through human command about a new threat emerging from the UN. Galactic Core. The Draketh Empire. They called themselves a species that didn't conquer worlds for resources or territory, but for entertainment. They captured entire populations and forced them to fight in massive arena complexes scattered across their empire. "Yunji, get me Admiral Dujan immediately," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command that had earned him respect throughout the human fleet. The lieutenant's hands moved quickly across her console, establishing a secure quantum communication link with the flagship Iron Fist. The massive dreadnought served as the mobile command center for the 7th Battle Group. Currently conducting patrol operations in the nearby Vega sector. "Connection established," Sir Yunji announced. The main screen flickered, then resolved into the stern face of Admiral Duyan. Even through the digital transmission, her presence filled the bridge with authority. Behind her, the flagship's command center buzzed with activity as officers moved between stations, their voices creating a backdrop of controlled urgency. "Captain Hyanwu," she said without any social pleasantries, "I assume you've intercepted the alien transmission we've been monitoring." "Yes, ma'am," Hyanwu replied, grateful that his superior was always 3 steps ahead of any situation. "The Kalari Republic is requesting immediate military assistance. According to our translation algorithms, the Draketh Empire has surrounded their home system." Doyen's expression grew darker, if such a thing was possible. "I've been in contact with Galactic Council representatives for the past hour. They've already declined to intervene, claiming the Kalari system falls outside their established jurisdiction. Apparently, saving an entire civilization isn't worth the political complications it might create with the Draketh." The words hit Hyanwu like a physical blow. It served humanity's expansion into space for over 2 decades, and the one thing that had always separated humans from other species was their willingness to help those who couldn't help themselves. It was a trait born from centuries of struggle on Earth's hostile surface, where cooperation meant survival and abandoning others meant becoming monsters. "Admiral," he said, feeling the familiar fire rising in his chest, "request permission to assemble a response fleet." Duyan's face showed the ghost of a smile, the kind that appeared before major battles when commanders knew they were about to make decisions that would change everything. "Permission granted, Captain. You have full authorization to mobilize the 7th Battle Group. Signal all ships to prepare for immediate deployment. These Dracoth are about to learn what happens when they prey on innocent people while humans are watching." The connection ended, leaving Hyenwu staring at a blank screen while his mind raced through the implications. Within hours, 68 human warships would be jumping toward an unknown system to face an enemy they had never fought. All because aliens they had never met were crying for help. Sir Youngji's voice broke through his thoughts. Incoming priority messages from Fleet Command. "All ships are reporting ready status for emergency deployment." Hyenwu nodded, feeling the weight of command settle across his shoulders like an old familiar coat. "Signal the fleet. We jump in 2 hours." The assembly point at Sigma 7 had never seen anything like this before. What started as empty space suddenly erupted into a light show as 68 human warships dropped out of hyperspace. In perfect formation, each ship materialized with a brilliant flash of blue-white energy, their hulls gleaming under the distant starlight. As they took their positions in the massive battle formation, Admiral Duyan stood on the command deck of her flagship Iron Fist Asterisk, watching through the panoramic viewport as her fleet assembled around her. The Dreadnought was a monster of a ship, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. But even surrounded by such firepower, she felt the weight of what they were about to attempt. "Admiral, all ships reporting ready status," announced Communications Officer Jinwu, his headset crackling with dozens of simultaneous transmissions from across the fleet. "Captains are requesting permission to speak." "Put them through," Dujan ordered, knowing her commanders needed to hear the plan before they jumped into what could be the biggest battle of their careers. Commander Taman's voice came through first, transmitted from the bridge of his destroyer Stormchaser. The ship was one of the newer models, built specifically for speed and hitting power. "Admiral, my crews have been running combat drills for the past 2 hours. We're locked and loaded, and honestly these Dracoths picked the wrong species to terrorize." Duyan could hear the eager energy in his voice, the same battle hunger that had made humans feared across the galaxy. "Steady, Commander. Save that energy for when we need it." Captain Sunny's calm voice followed from the medical frigate Healing Light. Her ship looked nothing like the sleek destroyers around it, instead resembling a floating hospital with massive red crosses painted on its white hull. "Medical bays are prepared for massive casualties, Admiral. We've got trauma teams standing by and emergency surgical units ready for deployment. Both for our people and theirs, though I suspect we'll be treating more Kaleri survivors than anything else." "Good thinking, Captain," Dujan replied. Sanhi had seen enough battles to know that the real work often began after the shooting stopped. Lieutenant Borum approached from the tactical station, carrying a datapad filled with the latest intelligence reports. Her face was grim as she delivered the update that everyone had been dreading. "Ma'am, our long-range scouts have confirmed Dracoth force strength. We're looking at approximately 200 vessels surrounding the Kaleri homeworld. They've arranged themselves in what appears to be a collection formation." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. 200 ships against 68 was bad enough, but the formation pattern told a darker story. The Dracoth weren't positioned for conquest or occupation. They were set up for harvesting. "Explain what you mean by collection formation," Duyan ordered, though she already suspected the answer. Bjorm's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Ma'am, they've positioned their largest vessels in low orbit around the planet, with smaller craft making regular trips to the surface. Based on energy readings, they're using massive tractor beams to literally lift entire city blocks into their cargo holds.
Ow.
Du-Yan felt her blood turn to ice. Intelligence reports had described Dracoth tactics before, but seeing it happening in real time was different. They weren't just conquering the Kaleri homeworld, they were stealing its entire population for their arena worlds, where captured aliens were forced to fight for entertainment until they died. "How long do the Kaleri have?" she asked. "At current rate of collection, maybe 6 hours before the planet is completely stripped of all sentient life," Barham replied. The Admiral turned to face the main communication screen, knowing that every captain in her fleet was watching and waiting for orders. These were men and women who had volunteered to serve on the edge of known space, protecting humanity's expansion into the galaxy. They had signed up to fight pirates and hostile alien species, but this was something different. This was about standing up to monsters. "All ships, this is Admiral Du-Yan," she announced, her voice carrying across the fleet communication network to every bridge and every crew member in the formation. "Today, we're not just responding to a distress call. We're not just protecting an allied species. We're sending a message to every predator, every slaver, and every monster in this galaxy that humanity stands between them and the innocent." Captain Haiyan Wu's voice crackled through from the thunderstrike. "Admiral, what are our rules of engagement?"
I'll do yes.
Smile was sharp as a blade. "Captain, any Dracoth vessel that doesn't immediately release all prisoners and withdraw from the system is to be considered hostile. We're here to save lives, but we're not going to ask nicely twice." Commander Jehoon from the heavy cruiser Steel Hammer added his voice to the conversation. "Ma'am, what about Galactic Council protocols? We're technically operating outside established jurisdiction." "The Galactic Council had their chance to help," Du-Yan replied coldly. "They chose politics over lives. We choose differently." The tactical display showed all 68 human ships in perfect formation, their crews ready for battle. Destroyers and frigates formed the outer screen, while heavy cruisers and battleships took positions in the center. The massive dreadnought Iron Fist anchored the formation, its weapons capable of engaging multiple targets simultaneously. "Navigation? Do we have jump coordinates locked?" Du-Yan asked. "Yes, ma'am," replied Navigator Sung-Woo. "Hyperspace route calculated for maximum tactical advantage. We'll drop out of jump space at the edge of the Kaleri system, giving us full sensor coverage of Dracoth positions. All ships report ready for hyperspace transition," Jinwoo announced after checking with each vessel in the fleet. Du-Yan took one last look at the tactical display, knowing that in a few minutes they would be committed to a battle that could determine the fate of an entire species. The Kaleri had never heard of humanity before today, but they were about to discover what it meant to have humans as allies. "Execute hyperspace transition in 10 seconds, she ordered. 5.4.3.1. Execute. Space around the human fleet began to bend and twist as hyperspace. Generators activated simultaneously across all 68 ships. Reality seemed to fold in on itself as the vessels disappeared from normal space, leaving only empty void, where moments before the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled had been waiting in the depths of hyperspace. Racing faster than light toward the Kaleri system, Admiral Du-Yan stood quietly on her bridge and prepared for war. The transition from hyperspace hit like a punch to the gut. One moment the human fleet was racing through the twisted dimensions of faster-than-light travel, and the next they materialized at the edge of the Kaleri system, facing a scene that would haunt them forever. "Sweet Mother of Earth," whispered Captain Haiyan Wu from the bridge of his destroyer Thunderstrike, staring at the tactical display that showed the Kaleri homeworld surrounded by what could only be described as mechanical nightmares. The Dracoth fleet was unlike anything in human military databases. Their ships looked like enormous insects that had been crossed with war machines. All sharp angles and chitinous armor plating, massive vessels the size of small moons hung in orbit around the beautiful blue-green world below, while smaller craft swarmed between them like angry wasps. Admiral Sensor Operator Jinei's voice cut through the shocked silence on the Iron Fist's bridge. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. The Dracoth are using some kind of Extraction beams. Admiral Duyan moved to stand behind Jin'e's station, her experienced eyes studying the sensor readouts. What she saw there made her stomach turn. Those aren't extraction beams, Lieutenant. They're tractor beams. Industrial grade, powerful enough to lift entire city blocks. The main screen shifted to show a magnified view of the planet's surface. Kaleri cities, with their elegant spires and flowing architecture, were being literally torn from the ground by massive energy beams projected from the Dracoth harvester ships. Whole neighborhoods disappeared into the bellies of the alien vessels, along with everyone living inside them. Ma'am, Jin'e's voice was barely controlled. I'm detecting approximately 4 million Kaleri life signs already aboard Dracoth ships. They're taking the entire population. Captain Hyanwu's destroyer had moved to point position, giving him the clearest view of the devastation. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Mignon, was running continuous scans of the Dracoth formation. Sir, the enemy has organized their fleet into collection groups. The big ships are doing the harvesting, while smaller vessels provide security. How many are we facing? Hyanwu asked, though he already dreaded the answer. 212 vessels, sir. The largest ones are roughly 3 times the size of our dreadnought. Hyanwu felt his hands clench into fists. The human fleet was outnumbered more than 3 to 1, facing ships that were individually more massive than anything they had ever built. But the sight of those tractor beams tearing apart cities full of innocent people made the odds irrelevant. Admiral Duyan, he called over the fleet communication channel, requesting permission to engage immediately. We can't let this continue, granted, Captain. All ships, battle formation Delta, target their harvester vessels, first save as many Kaleri as possible. The human fleet spread out like a pack of wolves. Destroyers and frigates racing ahead while the heavier ships took supporting positions. Their movement was fluid and coordinated. The result of countless hours of training in the deep space between stars, the Dracoth response was immediate and arrogant. A communication signal pierced through space, and suddenly every human bridge was looking at something that belonged in nightmares. General Vexstar stood nearly 3 meters tall, a body covered in chitinous plates that gleamed like black metal. 4 powerful arms ended in clawed hands, while compound eyes the size of dinner plates reflected the bridge lights of his flagship Soul Render. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked and scraped together, creating sounds that the translation computers could barely process. Unknown vessels. His voice carried the kind of amusement a cat might show when discovering new mice to play with. You dare interfere with Dracoth expansion. This world and its inhabitants belong to the Empire now. Withdraw immediately, or join the Kolar in our arena worlds. Admiral Duyan stepped forward until she was directly in front of the communication pickup, her expression colder than the vacuum of space. Every human on every ship could see her through their own screens, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had never backed down from a fight. This is Admiral Duyan of the Human Defense Fleet. You have exactly 30 seconds to release all Kaleri prisoners and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning. Vexstar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. The sound was like fingernails on metal, designed to intimidate and unnerve. Humans have never heard of this. Human species, your pathetic little fleet will provide entertainment in our arenas for perhaps a few hours before you all die screaming. Behind the Dracoth general, other alien officers could be seen moving around what appeared to be a command center carved from living bone. Trophy cases lined the walls, filled with the preserved remains of conquered species. The message was clear. The Dracoth didn't just defeat their enemies, they collected them. Your species has clearly never learned proper manners, Dujan replied, her voice deadly calm. Commander Timon, please demonstrate human firepower and target their flagship's primary weapons array. The destroyer Stormchaser was already in position, its sleek hull bristling with weapons that had been designed based on centuries of human warfare. Commander Timon didn't hesitate for even a second. Firing main batteries, he announced over the communication channel. The Stormchasers. Railguns spoke with the voice of thunder. Metallic slugs the size of telephone poles were accelerated to nearly light speed by powerful magnetic fields. creating projectiles that carried more kinetic energy than most planets saw in their entire existence. The rounds crossed the distance. To Vexstar's flagship in less than 3 seconds. The impact was spectacular. Dracoth shields designed to deflect energy weapons and deflect smaller projectiles simply ceased to exist when hit by human kinetic rounds. The slugs punched through the alien ship's armor like it was made of tissue paper, sending cascades of sparks and debris streaming into space. Vexstar's flagship shuddered under the impact, its massive bulk actually shifting position from the sheer force of the strike. Warning lights flashed across the alien bridge as damage reports flooded in from throughout the ship. "Impossible," Vexstar shrieked, his compound eyes reflecting genuine shock for the first time. "Our shields should have your shields were designed for civilized warfare," Duyan interrupted. "We're not civilized. We're from Earth, and we don't fight fair." The communication channel filled with alien shrieks of rage and shock before, cutting to static as the Dracoth tried to process what had just happened. Their flagship, supposedly invincible, had been damaged by a single salvo from a ship 1/10 its size. "All ships," Admiral Duyan's voice carried across the human fleet, "the Dracoth have had their warning. Show them what happens when they threaten innocent people while humans are watching." The battle that erupted in the Kalari system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Where most civilized species fought with precise energy beams and calculated defensive maneuvers, humans brought something entirely different to the table. Concentrated violence born from millions of years of evolution on a planet that had spent every single day trying to kill them. Captain Sun-Hee watched from the bridge of her medical frigate Healing Light as the space around her exploded into chaos. Dracoth ships fired massive plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, but human vessels danced between the energy beams like they were performing some deadly ballet. Her ship wasn't built for combat, but it had a mission just as important as the destroyers and battleships around her. "Medical teams, prepare for emergency trauma protocols," she announced over the ship's internal communication system. "We're going directly into those harvester ships to extract Kalari prisoners." Her boarding parties were already suiting up in the cargo bays, led by Sergeant Kyung-Soo, a veteran of the Martian colonial wars who had seen combat in environments that would kill most aliens just by breathing the air. Its powered armor was a marvel of human engineering designed to function in Earth's crushing gravity, its toxic atmosphere, and extreme weather conditions. "Listen up, Marines," Kyung-Soo addressed his team as they checked their weapons and life support systems. "These Dracoth ships are going to be full of surprises. Toxic atmosphere, crushing gravity, maybe even some kind of biological weapons. But remember, we're from Earth. We've survived worse than anything these bugs can throw at us." The boarding pod launched from Healing Light like a bullet, its armored hull designed to punch through enemy ship plating and deliver Marines directly into hostile territory. Inside, 12 human soldiers prepared for what could be their last mission. The impact shook the entire Dracoth harvester vessel as the boarding pod tore through its hull and embedded itself deep in the alien ship's interior. Emergency alarms began wailing throughout the vessel as atmosphere rushed out through the breach. "Go, go, go," Kyung-Soo shouted as the pod doors exploded outward, revealing the nightmarish interior of the Dracoth ship. The corridors were designed for creatures much larger than humans, with ceilings that stretched 5 meters high and walls that seemed to be made from some kind of living bone. Worse, the air was filled with a greenish gas that would have been lethal to most species in the galaxy. "These corridors are filled with some kind of poison gas," reported Corporal Hygiene over the squad communication channel, her voice slightly muffled by her helmet's breathing apparatus. "My suit's sensors are going crazy, but the life support system doesn't seem stressed. It's because we evolved breathing worse stuff." Kyung-Soo replied grimly as his team moved through the alien ship like ghosts of death. "Earth's atmosphere would kill most of these species. Keep moving. We've got civilians to extract." The human Marines moved with deadly efficiency through the Dracoth vessel, their powered armor allowing them to function in conditions that would have crushed most alien species. When they encountered Dracoth soldiers, the fights were brief and one-sided. The aliens were larger and stronger individually, but they had never faced opponents who treated extreme violence as a natural state of being. Meanwhile, spin in the space battle raging outside, Commander Taman was demonstrating why humans had become feared throughout the galaxy as natural-born warriors. His destroyer Storm Chaser weaved between Dracuth capital ships like a shark among whales, its weapon systems firing continuously. "Sir, their command ship is trying to break away from the main formation," reported his weapons officer, Lieutenant Minho, his fingers dancing across targeting controls as he tracked multiple enemy vessels simultaneously. "Not today," Taman growled, his eyes never leaving the tactical display that showed the three-dimensional battlefield around them. All destroyers, converging attack pattern. Cut off their retreat before they can escape to hyperspace. It's the Asterisk Storm. Chaser Asterisk and her sister ships moved like a pack of wolves hunting mammoth, their coordinated strikes systematically dismantling Dracuth defensive formations. Human railguns spoke with voices of thunder, sending kinetic projectiles that punched through alien shields and armor with devastating effect. Missile pods opened like deadly flowers, unleashing clouds of seeking warheads that tracked their targets with relentless precision. What made the human assault so terrifying wasn't just their weapons technology, it was their attitude. Most civilized species treated warfare as a necessary evil. Humans approached it with an enthusiasm that bordered on joy. Their communication channels were filled with battle cries, tactical banter, and even jokes as they systematically destroyed enemy vessels. Fox 3, impact on target Alpha 7, called out Lieutenant Sa-Young from the frigate Lightning Strike as her missiles found their mark on a Dracuth heavy cruiser. "That's another bug swatted." "Nice shooting, Lightning," replied Captain Dongwook from the battleship Thunder God. "My turn to play," firing main batteries at the Harvester ship in Grid 77. The battleship's massive guns spoke with authority, sending projectiles the size of small buildings into the alien vessel. The impact was so violent that the entire ship broke apart in a cascade of explosions and debris. On the Kaleri homeworld below, survivors who had hidden in underground shelters during the Dracuth attack emerged to witness something they had never imagined possible. The alien invaders, who had seemed invincible just hours before, were being systematically destroyed by ships they had never seen before. The human vessels moved through space with a fluid grace that defied their military purpose, engaging multiple targets simultaneously while avoiding enemy fire with maneuvers that seemed impossible. But what truly amazed the Kolari observers was the attitude of these mysterious rescuers. Elder Nelthara, the senior member of the Kolari High Council, listened to the translated human communications with growing amazement. "They're laughing," she said to her aide, her aquatic features showing confusion. "They're in the middle of a battle for our survival, and they're actually enjoying themselves." "It's not just enjoyment," replied her aide, who had been studying the tactical displays. "They're treating this like it's the most natural thing in the galaxy. It's like fighting massive space battles is just something they do for fun." The truth was more complex than the Kaleri could understand. Humans didn't fight because they enjoyed violence, they fought because they were good at it, and because they couldn't stand by and watch innocent people suffer. Every human in that fleet carried the genetic memory of 10,000 generations who had survived by fighting back against impossible odds. As the battle continued, it became clear that the Dracuth Empire had made a fatal error. They had chosen to prey on innocent people while humans were watching. And now they were learning why Earth was classified as a death world by every species in the galaxy. The lesson was being written in fire and steel across the star system, and it would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. The massive Dracuth flagship Soulrender drifted through space like a dying whale. Its once terrifying hull, now scarred with impact craters and glowing breaches where human, kinetic rounds had punched through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. The emergency lights flickered weakly through the gaping holes in its structure. While debris and atmosphere continued to leak into the vacuum of space, General Vexstar stood in what remained of his command bridge, his forearms hanging limp at his sides as he stared at the tactical display showing the complete destruction of his fleet. Of the 212 vessels that had entered the Kaleri system with absolute confidence, fewer than 30 were still capable of hyperspace travel. The rest were either completely destroyed or drifting powerlessly like his own flagship. The communication screen in front of him flickered to life, showing Admiral Duhine's face. But where once he had looked at her with contempt and amusement, now something very much like fear crept into his compound eyes. The human woman's expression was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel beneath it that promised terrible consequences. For those who crossed her, you, ... Psst. Vexter's voice shook as his mandibles clicked nervously. Your species fights like demons from the void itself. What manner of cursed Deathworld could have spawned creatures such as you? Duyan's smile was sharp as a blade, the kind that appeared on the faces of apex predators when they had cornered their prey. Earth General. And this is what happens when you threaten innocent people while humans are watching. The word Earth meant nothing to Vextar, but he would remember it for the rest of his life, if he survived long enough to have a rest of his life. Around him, his bridge crew cowered behind their stations, their chitinous bodies trembling as they witnessed the complete collapse of everything they had believed about Draketh's superiority. We ... We will remember this, Vextar managed to say, though his voice carried none of its earlier arrogance. The Empire will send 1,000 fleets to avenge. No, you won't, Duyan interrupted, her voice carrying absolute certainty. You're going to run back to your Empire and tell them exactly what happened here. You're going to explain that? Humanity has drawn a line in the stars, and anyone who crosses it by harming innocent people will face the same fate as your fleet. Captain Huyan Wu's voice crackled over the communication channel from his destroyer. Admiral, should we finish them off? Dujan considered for a moment, looking at the pathetic remains of what had once been a mighty invasion force. Negative, Captain. Let them go. Sometimes the message is more important than the killing. The few remaining Draketh ships that could still move began limping toward the edge of the system where they could safely enter hyperspace. Their crews would spread word throughout the galaxy about the terrifying new species that had appeared from nowhere, and fought like living nightmares. Given form, meanwhile, throughout the Kaleri system, the real work was beginning. Captain Sunhee's medical teams had successfully extracted thousands of Kaleri prisoners from the captured harvester ships, and the delicate aquatic aliens were being transferred to human medical facilities for treatment. Captain Hyan Wu stood in the cargo bay of his destroyer, watching as stretcher after stretcher of rescued Kaleri were carried aboard. The aliens were unlike anything humans had encountered before, tall and graceful with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light, and large eyes that reflected deep intelligence and ancient wisdom. Elder Finara, the oldest member of the Kalari High Council, had been among the first captured by the Draketh. Now, she lay on a medical gurney, her breathing shallow but steady as human medics worked to treat injuries inflicted by her captors. When she saw Hyan Wu approaching, she managed to raise one delicate hand in greeting. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice like the sound of waves on a distant shore. "We had given up all hope. The Galactic Council abandoned us, and we believed. The galaxy had forgotten that we existed." Hyan Wu knelt beside her gurney, his weathered face showing the kind of gentleness that only came from someone who had seen too much suffering. "The galaxy may be forgot, Elder Finara, but not humanity. We don't abandon people who need help. It's not in our nature." The elderly Kalari's eyes filled with tears, or what passed for tears among her species. "Your people fought an entire fleet to save strangers they had never met. Why? What do you gain from this?" "We gain the knowledge that innocent people are safe," Hyan Wu replied simply. "Sometimes that's enough." Admiral Duyan stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching through the panoramic viewport as human ships moved throughout the system, collecting survivors and beginning the massive task of rebuilding what the Draketh had destroyed. The beautiful blue-green world below showed scars from the alien attack, but it was still alive and its people were free. Lieutenant Yunji approached from the communication station, carrying a datapad that seemed to be continuously updating with new information. "Ma'am, we're receiving dozens of messages from across the galaxy. Word is spreading about what we did here." "What kind of messages?" Dugian asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Distress calls, Admiral. Dozens of them. Different Species from all over the galaxy requesting human assistance against various threats: pirates, slavers, hostile governments. It seems our reputation is ... growing rapidly. Dujian nodded slowly, understanding the implications. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They had taken on an enemy that outnumbered them 3-1 and won decisively, all to save a species they had never met before. Word of that kind of action traveled fast in a galaxy where most civilized species preferred to avoid conflict. "There's more, ma'am," Yunji continued. "Intelligence reports suggest that several major criminal organizations have already begun changing their operational patterns. They're avoiding systems near human space." The Admiral looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity had just crossed a threshold they could never return from. They were no longer just another species trying to find their place in the galactic community. They had become something else entirely: protectors, guardians. The ones others called when the darkness seemed too strong to fight alone. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Prepare for extended deployment. Something tells me we're going to be very busy in the coming months." As the human fleet prepared to depart the Kaleri system, grateful survivors gathered on the surface of their homeworld to watch the strange ships that had saved them. Children who had hidden in underground shelters while their cities burned now pointed skyward at the departing vessels. And their parents spoke in hushed, reverent tones about the warriors. From the death world called Earth, the galaxy would never be the same. In the deepest corners of space, where tyrants plotted in shadow and slavers planned their next raids, a new fear took hold. Somewhere among the stars, humans were watching, and they did not forgive those who preyed upon the helpless. The age of unchecked predation was over. The Deathworld fleet had spoken, and the universe had listened. The end.